This is Share the Vision, presented by the Resource Center, a discussion of the programs and services of the Resource Center and about issues related to individuals with disabilities. Undoubtedly, you can hear the crowd in the background. I'm at the break room in the back building at 75 Jones and Gifford Avenue, and I have come here today for a special open house that is being held to talk about issues related to sheltered workshops, allied industries, and how those concepts, well known and understood, I hope, in the Resource Center community, I suspect in the general community as well, are about to change or are already gradually changing. Joining me to help you, radio listener, understand what these changes are all about is Nancy Ingram, Assistant Executive Director at the Resource Center, and Greg Bender, Director of Business Operations here at the Resource Center. Nancy, thank you for taking the time to dig into a complicated subject with us on the air today.
Well, yes, Dennis, and thank you for coming. What we're trying to do here today is raise awareness among the people we support, particularly in the work program, and their families, on some changes that are taking place across New York State related to these programs, formerly known as sheltered workshops. We call it the Work Center programs, where people come in and do real work and earn real money. The current movement in the system is away from this type of program, and the theory is that everybody should be working in a regular integrated job in the community like everybody else. People should live, work, and play in the community, not only among other people with disabilities. That's the rationale, that is the philosophy that we're working with here.
Hold that thought for a moment. Greg Bender, an introductory comment before we look at some of the information that has been developed on some signboards here in the break room right next to Allied Industries. Greg, thanks for joining us first.
No problem, Dennis. Thank you for coming. Just to tag along to what Nancy started, the changes that are, I guess, more solid now are things that have been proposed for a number of years. The closing of the work centers has been on people's radar, I would say, 15 years, maybe even longer. There's been a movement within the nation, not so much in Chautauqua County, not so much in rural areas of the country, but more in larger cities, that work centers have become outdated, that there are better options for workers to find jobs. And if you're in New York City, you have an option that people in Chautauqua County don't have. So the movement that started 15 years ago, whatever it was, to start closing work centers is an action, and for areas like the Resource Center that's in a rural county, rural setting, it's a limiting factor for our workers, and they don't have the options, they don't have the exposure, they don't have the choices that a lot of cities, a lot of places in America have. So our feeling is, we're not saying integrated employment is a bad idea. We think it's a great idea. If somebody can get a job making minimum wage, working side by side with non-disabled workers, that's what we want too. But the reality is, number one, what will it cost for that to happen? And two, how many of those positions are out there? And what do the people do when you don't let them come to the work center? I mean, there's a lot of real hard questions that need to be answered.
So many things to catch up on here, but I want to start with the first signboard where it says the goal is New York State wants to eliminate traditional work centers over the next 6 years. Specifically, why, Nancy Ingram or Greg Bender, why does New York State want to eliminate these? Has it been compelled to, impelled to?
No, although they're using a Supreme Court ruling, the Olmstead decision, which dictated that people with disabilities should be in the least restrictive environment possible and appropriate for their needs. That ruling came about because of two women who sued, was it Kansas, Greg?
Yes, I believe.
It was Kansas. Because they were in a nursing home and they didn't want to be in a nursing home, and there were no community options at the time. So the federal government and New York State are basing a lot of what they're doing now on that ruling. Our big objection is, as Greg said, we are thrilled when people get jobs out in the community. We love that. Since 1988, we've been working at helping people get jobs out there, and we've got several hundred working out there now who we support. What our objection to this is, there is no plan to replace this for people. There are no funds being put into any kind of replacement services. There is no economic development going on. There is nothing. It's sort of like throwing out the baby with the bathwater. They're ending this, or they want to end this type of program without anything being proposed to take its place.
Let me talk to Greg Bender for a moment about the employees who currently work at the Work Center, because we talk about employment for the disabled and opportunity for the disabled. Who works for you today, and what are the challenges of having that group of people with their skills and their disabilities move into other jobs in the community? Who's in the pool today?
Well, we do not serve a population that is one facet. We have multiple disabilities that we serve. We pretty much are open to anybody, regardless of what their disability, whether it's mentally challenged, physical, strokes, bad backs, you name it. We have a whole range of workers, and each person is unique, and each person has specific requirements and abilities.
And the sheltered workshop, we know it today, as it has grown to be, is a place where a person with a disability can succeed because the nature of the work is different, the nature of the supervision is different, the entire environment is set up so that they can succeed personally and be productive in a cause. I mean, isn't that one of the golden parts of the sheltered workshop?
Absolutely. We try to find the right job for the right person. We try to make them as productive as possible. In our work center, which we have 3 actual facilities, which maybe people don't know. We have the one at 75 Jones and Gifford. We have one on Chestnut Street in Dunkirk. And then we have a plant in Buffalo. And in those 3 work centers, we have the range of extremely complicated jobs to basic bench assembly, 1- and 2-step operations. So regardless of a worker's competency, regardless of their ability to socialize, regardless of how they have difficulties working and keeping on task, those are the types of things that prevent them from becoming a full-time worker at Phoenix Metal, at SKF. They need supports that a non-disabled person generally doesn't need.
Okay, that defines the work center beautifully, I think, the work center opportunity or situation. You used the term integrated employment, Greg, and either Greg Bender or Nancy Ingram, what's the difference between what you just described and this integrated employment?
Well, integrated employment is defined as, in this instance, as people with disabilities working side by side with people without disabilities. And we would, well, there's no argument really. Our government contract area here is an integrated employment setting. We have non-disabled people and people with disabilities working side by side. This assembly area you can see out there is not considered an integrated employment setting. It is strictly people with disabilities working. And so that is what's seen as segregated, and that is what is being opposed at this point by the whole system.
Anything further on that point, Greg?
Well, no, I would have just added that there's also a concern, even though we have people that are non-disabled as staff and caregivers, that it's not enough. Obviously, we have non-disabled people that work within our whole program. I mean, we have 1,300 employees, and we have another 400 workers that work production. So we have far more, but they do not work side by side, and that's the difference, as Nancy said, that they really look at what is normal. Is normal 2 disabled to 20 non-disabled, or is normal 50-50? There's some question of whether they even consider a work center that's 50-50, that's integrated enough. They haven't put any number on it. But again, you have to remember that the Olmstead decision said to the most integrated possible, not eliminate all work centers. New York State is using the Olmstead decision to close their work centers so that they don't have to fight the Department of Justice. It's a settlement with the Department of Justice rather than the justice taking them to court and forcing them to do things maybe they don't want to. They're able to save money. In my opinion, I'll be more crass. New York State's plan is going to save them money, and they don't have to fight the tough fight to defend these positions. And I think that's really where it's at.
And our big concern is if people aren't coming here to work, and let's say we got them a job in the community that is 10 hours a week, which has happened in other states that closed work centers, what do they do the rest of the time? That's the big issue. And there are not resources being built into this plan at this point to assist with that. We have some strong beliefs that, okay, New York State, if you want to do this, fine. Where's the economic development? Are you helping develop new businesses? Would you help us develop a new business to have a completely integrated, business with people with disabilities and without? They're not backing it up with anything concrete that's going to help people. And we fear that people are going to end up sitting at home.
Or not being productive in the way that they are now,
yes,
because they'll be working 10 hours a week instead of 30 or whatever
exactly.
They do now.
And I think another point is when they're not among their friends, socially and psychologically, they regress. The number of people that come in here and just blossom because of the fact they can earn a paycheck, because they can sit and have lunch with their friends, is a big deal. It's a thing we all take for granted. And now, if they're working 10 hours a week, are they sitting home, nobody to talk to, nobody to interact, nobody to get better with?
You bring me to an interesting point, and I wanted to address this with both of you, because as an observer and someone who's done many programs and stories, in this room and in the adjacent workshop, the word that comes to mind is pride. The people who work here are proud. The Resource Center is proud. They have pride in what they are producing, or the employees here are producing. The community has expressed pride and joy in what you've been able to do, particularly for the U.S. government, but not exclusively. I mean, this has been a great story to this point in terms of bringing meaning to people's lives beyond the employees here. So there must be a very strong emotional component to the response that you have to this, because of what I sense has been a very joyful, and to use the word again, proud environment around all of this.
You're absolutely right. And part of what we do has always been to encourage people to work to the highest level of their ability. And that often includes getting a job outside of here. And we have a lot of pride in doing that. But people try jobs, they lose jobs, and we've always had this for people to come back to. It's been like a safety net for some people. And we have problems with the thought of this going away. So.
I think one of the ramifications that maybe haven't been given the proper thought is, what do the families do? The families are who's going to take it on the chin. They're the ones that now have a place for their loved one to go work, and they know they're safe and protected, and they can earn money. But if they're home 30 of the 40 hours they normally would be here, that's going to affect thousands of people's lives in terms of how they double income families that no longer would be able to have it. It's going to have a far-reaching effect than beyond just the Resource Center.
Well, let me ask a couple of specific questions. We'll get on to your recommendations, because we're about halfway through Share the Vision. We are at the break room adjacent to Allied Industries, 75 Jones and Gifford Avenue in Jamestown, concerned about the future of places like this. Greg, one of the things the community's been proud about, and I alluded to it a moment ago, is the government contracts, the things that you've been able to make here and ship right to the battlefront. Will that disappear under this plan?
Actually, no. We can work on the government-type work with the people that we have now. What it'll do, it'll reduce our ability to do larger projects. So it would reduce, and I can't give you a percentage, Is it 30%? Is it 40%? Because of the way the rules and regulations revolve around our work, we have to have a certain level of disabled labor on all of our work as an agency. And if the assembly programs are eliminated, the work that we do for the government would be limited. And so not only would these people lose their jobs, but some of the government workers would lose their jobs as well.
It's been publicized at least quite often on this program. You've done a lot of work for Clark-Bauxite here in Jamestown. Would that disappear?
Probably, for sure. That kind of work we would not be able to perform.
That's the assembly of boxes, putting cotton in jewelry boxes,
Zippo lighter boxes. Yeah, we do upwards of 8 million of boxes a year for Clark-Bauxite. That work would go away. Clark would have to find somebody else to do that work.
Nancy Ingram, let me then, one of the reasons you're holding this open house today is you want to engage the community. We're doing this radio show in hopes of engaging the community so that they, members of the community, will take action. What's the advocacy, the action that you hope people will take considering the situation you face here now?
We are hoping that people will make their voices heard. If they value this, if they want their family member to continue to be able to have this option, we're hoping they will let New York State hear it loud and clear. We're hoping they will have their elected officials tell them about it, tell New York State, tell the governor, tell the President of the United States that this is something they value and they want it to continue. When agencies like this started, 50 years ago now, it was because of parents advocating for services for their children. They had none at the time. And that was an extremely effective advocacy initiative. And we'd like to see parents kind of get excited again and tell people what they think. You know, it's one thing when we say it, but because we're seen as having self-interest in this. It's another thing when family members get involved. And we're hoping they'll help us and help themselves and advocate for this issue. And at the very least, let's ask New York State, what is your plan for afterwards? Let's say we closed all these. What's your plan?
Is this something that the state legislature could intervene and act on, or is it some state agency that's part of the governor's office? To whom does the responsibility lie for either effecting these changes or altering the plan at this moment? Who really has that control?
It's the governor. Yeah. It's the department of the governor. It's at the direction of the governor's office for the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities, OPWDD. And mental health, I would assume, is in part of that.
Right.
I think legislation certainly could affect it, but I don't believe they blessed it. How they bless it is by the budget. They approve the budget. So indirectly, they do affect it. An example I'll give you, last year at budget time, they reduced the statewide funding for work centers by $12 million.
It's more than just work centers.
But it was a big deal. Yeah, it was all OPW got cut X percent.
Yeah.
And families, agencies kind of went nuts and really put the pressure via phone calls, via mail, and they actually almost 100% of that was cut was put back in the budget. So it can be effective.
Right.
Now,
can I just mention also that we have a lot of support from Assemblyman Goodell and Senator Kathy Young. They know us, they know our programs, they know our services, and they have always been extremely supportive of the continuation of this and our other services. So just wanted to mention that.
I was going to try and get around to that. Let me, at this point, considering the point that we are in the program, best case scenario. Greg Bender, Nancy Ingram, the best outcome that could come from these changes, this advocacy?
In my opinion, the best outcome would be that New York State would put some money and some planning and some work into, okay, what do we do now? All right, as we start to try to move people out of here, if there are no jobs in Chautauqua County, or there is no funding to provide the kind of support they need, what is the plan? And we'd like to see economic development across the state get involved in this. We'd like to see less reliance on Medicaid money the whole Medicaid thing enters into this too. The Department of Justice and New York State fighting over Medicaid payments to New York State. So we'd like more thought put into it. We'd like consider the people, and if we do need to start placing more people, which would be wonderful, in community jobs, give us the support, give us the money, give us the economic development to do it.
I think that's the key. The economic development is the key linchpin, because without that, there's no place for these workers to go. And I would add one more thing, that I think the work centers play an important role in having a place for people to be trained, but also, as Nancy said previously, not everybody makes it the first time. They need a place to go, and we don't want them sitting home. They need to keep programs like this as an option. This is not the time to limit choice. This is not the time to limit choice. Choice and options are what is going to make everybody successful. Without the work centers, it's just one less thing that a worker has to be able to earn some money. And the money is important to these people. They don't live off it. A lot of them don't live off it. Some of them do, but many don't. But it's so important to them. If you talk to them, you'd understand.
I think you've outlined this pretty well, too, but I'll give you an opportunity to speak to the worst-case scenario as we wrap this up. If this falls apart as opposed to building up in the way that you hope that it would change, if that does not happen, what could be the most profound results of this otherwise?
The worst would be a lot of the people we know and support here not having a plan, not having productive things to do during the day. You know, we're already laying the groundwork for some contingency plans here. Some of the people that are currently in the work center, we have no funding for the supports they need. We're attempting to get them through other programs, other services, other agencies if need be. But the worst case would be people just not having the services and supports they need.
Yeah, I think it's the ultimate result that could be the worst is that the economics of this program, which is significant when you consider the government jobs, are at risk. And that's a big risk to the community. In a community our size, when we're doing as much government work, eventually it'll erode the population, and there's going to be no place for them to go, so we're not going to have people to train. So it's like a circle, and it's not a good circle. It's a big issue.
Nancy Ingram and Greg Bender. Nancy, who is Assistant Executive Director here at the Resource Center, Greg Bender, Director of Business Operations, thank you for this thoughtful and meaningful explanation of why you are here today. I appreciate it a great deal.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Dennis.
Today on Share the Vision, coverage of an open house held at the Work Center on Jones and Gifford Avenue in Jamestown a little earlier this past week concerning the future of such work centers. At the open house, or just outside where it's a little quieter, Paul Chisana, Executive Director of the Resource Center, has joined me now. In the first part of this program, Greg Bender and Nancy Ingram have carefully developed the story of the sheltered workshop, Allied Industries, here in Jamestown and really as a concept everywhere, and talked about the challenges that concept now faces, that you face here at the Resource Center. And I would like to ask you, as the Executive Director of TRC, the same question that I concluded my interview with them with, and that is, what's the best and the worst possible outcome that can come as you approach this juncture, Paul Chisana?
Well, maybe I should start with the worst outcome, right? And the worst outcome has to do with the fact that this particular service and support system has evolved over the course, really, of the 3-4 last decades. Frankly, from the time that individuals came out of institutions into the communities, and people that were in the communities needed to remain in the communities. So this has evolved in a way that a number of different funding streams, always very fragile, always very inadequate, but that somehow have supported the experience of people being able, regardless of their level of productivity, capacity to produce or earn, wages, they were able to have the experience of paid employment and also a predictable schedule, kind of a Monday to Friday routine that was very meaningful and very purposeful. So the worst outcome would be that if that no longer can be sustained, this is a very fully experienced service and support. That means a lot to the individuals with severe disabilities, a lot to the families, a lot to the communities, employers that have been partnering with us, or that could potentially come to a close.
The other side of that coin, though, is the potential positive outcome very favorable, Paul? Is there something that could be saved? Could the system be continued as it is now?
So the system cannot continue as it is now because what has transpired, particularly in the past 5 to 10 years, is the fact that some of the generic funding support that came primarily from state government, sometimes from state government, county government, United Way, so it was a combination of state and local support. All the support has been converted into Medicaid so that the state can obtain an additional $1 participation. So now you have only Medicaid funding, but the Medicaid funding is only applicable for certain individuals that are eligible for those Medicaid services. Frankly, about only 25% of the population that we support. The other 75% now remains without any realistic, tangible support. And that's why right now this service is so vulnerable.
So knowing that, what is the best possible outcome that if the advocacy continues, if people in the highest levels of government of New York State listen to you?
So the best possible outcome is that all of a sudden people, believe it or not, they are appreciating the value of employment. So you have from the governor to elected officials to people saying people should be employed. And of course we've been saying that for the past 30, 40 years. So the best outcome would be that, for example, state government would employ 3-4% of their civil service from individuals with severe disabilities. The federal government does the same thing. That corporate world does the same thing. If that were to be happen, that would be the ideal outcome so that everyone truly, regardless of their level of productivity, will be able to participate into the value, both economic and social, of a fully integrated employment.
I would just like to say in conclusion, raise a point with you that I did with Greg and Nancy, and that is the great pride that I have felt in speaking to you, to people here on the shop floor, the great pride that individuals have had, the Resource Center has had, the community has had over this program. There's a great deal of emotion tied up in this, from my perspective, looking from the outside in.
That is so true, and that, again, is because individually that historically have been devalued and found an opportunity to be valued by showing that they can work, they can contribute, they can get a paycheck, even if the paycheck is not really adequate for a typical gainful employment opportunity. But again, to continue this type of services, governments need to stop using Medicaid, and they need to provide investments that relate to business activities and economic activities so that they can support organizations like ours with that inefficiency element that is part of supporting a population that wants to work, wants to gain, but has limitations in terms of the typical employer productivity expectation.
Paul Cesana, thank you for your time and your perspective on this critical issue at this point in the life of the Resource Center.
Well, thank you very much. We really appreciate it, as always.
Paul Cesana is the Executive Director of the Resource Center. And radio listeners, thank you for sharing the vision today.